Hi, I'm here today to do a spotlight with a really great leader and a really good friend of mine, Deirdre O'Connell, who is the CEO of Daniel Gale Sotheby's International Realty in New York. Deirdre, thank you so much for coming today. It's really special to have you here, and our audience is really excited to hear about your journey as a leader and how you got to where you are today, and hear some of the secrets of success and what happens on that journey.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here with you, Liz.
So can you start, I love to have our clients start with talking a little bit about their life before their career. You know, your childhood, your youth, how you grew up, and the values you learned at that stage of life that brought you to where you are today. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
Sure, I'd love to share. I'm the oldest of 5 children. My parents are immigrants. They came from Ireland. Wow. And they were both extremely hardworking, and they believed in hard work, they believed in education, and they believed in pushing their children to be the best they could be from a very young age.
Wow.
My father always worked, at that time anyway, in financial services.
Okay.
And my mother was more of a stay-at-home mom, but probably a pretty antsy one, loved to do things here and there. And one evening, she made really amazing pies, and one of her friends said, you know, you should sell these pies. Mm-hmm. And she took her all day to bake 4 pies the first Friday, and they sold out immediately. And the next week she had an order for like 8 pies. Took her like more time to do. And before she knew it, she was baking 25 pies on a weekend. God. And eventually one of the local fruit stands asked her if she would bake pies for the stand. So we ended up building a bakery in our garage. And as a whole family, it took the whole family, and we were very young, working together. We had an assembly line, and my mother would roll and make the pie crust, and I would do the filling, you know, put it in, and the next person would put, you know, water up the edges, and somebody would put the top on and do the edges, and then into the oven they would go.
That's fantastic.
But it took an incredible amount of work, and many times we do well over 100 pies on a Friday night for Saturday.
Oh my God! So she started with 4 pies and went to 100 pies with the O'Connell family.
Well, actually, Nolan family.
Nolan family. Okay. Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. So, but it was a lot of work, and that was the way we were brought up. And my parents were also, they were risk takers. Like, they took chances, and they a few years later had an opportunity to buy a market, a pretty established market, but not really working to its potential.
Right.
And they named it Nolan's Village Market, and they were ahead of their times in the sense that they believed in quality, not quantity. You know, my sister was the checkout person. I used to work in the back, and on a Saturday you'd be in bed and the phone would start ringing. My father would be like, "Get up here! There's a lot of people," and we'd have to go running up to work.
So you weren't a teenager that got to sleep till noon? Is that what you're saying?
Oh no! The later you were out, the more you had to work. In fact, if you were out really late, you had to do tuna fish and fish salad in the morning.
That was a good family policy. That's how you keep teenagers in line.
Yeah,
I like
that's
that.
It. But it was a great way to grow up, and it was really all about working hard, about the power of the team,
right? I love that.
And about taking chances. I mean, they had nothing to fall back on, but they always took that extra chance, knowing that hopefully it would pay off.
Yeah, well, it sounds like it did.
It did.
And it certainly sounds like it paid off in you.
Well, I think it gave me a lot of the confidence and a lot of the. I think the other thing, that they were really caring parents, and I think that if you have parents that really not only drive you but care and love you, that is the best combination, and that's a combination I think as a leader you need to have as well. I mean, you have to bring the best out in your people, but they have to know that you care and love them.
Yeah.
And that was certainly a lesson that I received from them.
How do you be a great female executive today, like yourself, a CEO, someone who drives an amazing business, and be a mother of 5, or be a mother at all and live a full life? Because so many women today are asking that question. They want it all. They want to be great leaders, make a lot of money, have incredible careers, and still be mothers and do all of that. And you did it. You've done it. You've done an amazing job. Tell me, what is your secret to success on that?
I think, well, we'll see. It's still being determined with the children.
I don't think that's true.
But I think it's a lot of things. I think I am very blessed to have a great husband who does help me, although he has an important job himself, and he works in the city every day and travels a bit. I think also, believe it or not, sometimes having a larger family is easier than having a smaller family.
Right.
My older children helped with the younger children. So I say to them all, I loved you all. I love you all equally, and I neglected you all equally.
That's the perfect combination, I think.
So
'cause I think a little neglect can go a long way.
Right, and I think that they actually they make humor out of it. Remember the time Mom forgot me? Well, no, I got a better story than that. But more than anything, I believe that I helped them along the way. I believe they helped me. I mean, they were expected, if we had an event like the parade down Plandom Road in Manhasset, they were expected to show up on Memorial Day and hand out flags.
Right.
They were expected to put labels on water bottles, and they were part of the journey.
Yeah,
and I think that if in any way you can make your family part of your life, work and personal, you're much more complete.
Yeah, what a gift, right? Yeah. And you give them all those values, just like you got right from the beginning.
And interestingly enough, I used to make them, when we first joined Daniel Gale, bake whale cookies to hand out at open houses.
That's fantastic.
And so like little things.
It's a team effort.
It's a team effort.
Good. Team. Work ethic, integrity goes right back to the parenting.
It does.
As well.
What I received from my parents, I hope I gave a little tiny bit of that to my children.
I'm sure you did. When you were starting to have that exposure and realize, hey, maybe I could become the CEO here, did you start to realize what kind of CEO you wanted to be? At what point do you start to see kind of yourself in that position and how you would want to lead?
Mm-hmm. I would say that some of the things that really helped me in making the Manhasset office number one, teamwork. Like, I really believe that we were an amazing team. Mm-hmm. Hard work, most importantly. I don't think I worked any less hard than anyone else in that office.
Right.
I set a pretty high standard as far as the expectations of hard work.
Right. And let me pause you there for a second, because I think that's so important in leaders today, that the leaders are working hard and kind of showing the example, and everyone looking up to that as the standard.
Yeah, and real estate is a business that you do have to work 24/7. It's like you're on call every single day.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting, and I think the agents appreciate having a leader that has empathy, because I'm right there with them. I'm in the trenches, working just as hard as they are.
Right.
And not telling them to work, experiencing it with them.
And what was the third quality you felt you brought?
Well, I always held everyone to a high ethical standard. I mean, real estate's not always known for its ethics, and I think, Daniel Gale's always been known to be an ethical company, but if you're always discussing it, you keep the standard.
Yeah. Why do you think the high ethical standard matters in that?
Because your reputation is all you really have at the end of the day, and if you compromise on your integrity, that history stays with you forever.
I think that's such an interesting point, because I think sometimes that can feel like such a gray line to people, and it's really not.
It's not. And I think people sense ethical people more than they even proving it. Like, if you come across as genuine and caring and ethical, people believe in you.
Right. You were in the succession plan to become the CEO of the company. You were working on the executive team. You were working closely with Pat and watching the culture that she had built, right?
Which was an amazing culture.
Absolutely.
But we grew very quickly. So in a matter of 5 or 6 years, we went from maybe 10 offices to 26 offices.
Right.
And that's hard. That type of rapid growth is difficult to, and it's not small mom and pop anymore. It's really trying to come up with some ways to bring consistency and to bring a culture of collaboration, a culture of feeling like a family but operating like a corporate entity, and that's not an easy combination, and it takes a lot of reinforcement, a lot of communication, and in some cases a lot of changes. We had to make some changes in our team.
So how do you help an organization evolve and not lose that specialness?
I think you hold on to what makes a company special, and I think what made Daniel Gale Sotheby's International Realty special was that it started with that small family feeling, and while you say that's difficult to bring that forward, it isn't as difficult as you think it is, because if you talk to people and you call them by their names and you acknowledge them for what their accomplishments are, and they know you care, isn't that what a family does?
Right.
When you think of big companies, you think of being insignificant.
Right, being just a digit.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
And again, that takes a lot of work. But
Well, how many agents is the company now?
we're about 850 agents.
So how do you bring that specialness to 800 agents?
Well, I do a few
I
simple.
mean, not just you, because you can't do it all.
yeah.
I mean, you can't hit 800. It has to be across, your platform.
Well, everyone helps, but personally,
Everyone helps make the pies.
that's right. And our managers have to step up, and they do it on their level, and our executive team does it on their level. But what I do, which is extremely time-consuming, but I text every agent who puts a house or a property in contract and congratulate them. And we do approximately 3,000 sides a year, so that's at least 3,000 texts I send out a year, and I don't have someone else do it. I call them, I acknowledge them by their name, by the address of the property.
That's great.
And it's small. It's a little big for me to do, but it's a small way just for them to know that I notice and I care.
Yeah.
And I do.
Right, and it goes back to what you said, your parents cared, right?
Yeah.
So feeling cared about really makes a difference. It makes it feel connected to.
And I think, therefore, the management team also sees the importance of acknowledgement and encouraging their agents.
How do you manage it? What keeps you going with all of that?
Yeah.
On your plate.
It's interesting. That's a good question, because there's so much to do every single day that I can and do still jump into crisis mode, because it's so much easier to solve the crisis of the moment than to continually bring forth implementation of the ultimate end goal vision.
Right.
So I think what keeps me up at night is trying to find that balance of getting the daily issues taken care of. And and in this business, every day is a new crisis. It just is. But trying to also keep enough time so that the long-term planning and goals are always, we're always moving towards that.
Yeah. So remembering to get out of the reaction and into being proactive and making sure the organization is moving forward with the big picture. And I think that's something every leader is struggling with. Everyone always loves to say work on the business, not in the business, but the reality is the business is hitting you in the face every day. The crises, the people, the issues, the challenges of the moment, or if you don't put that fire out, the house burns down. So you can't afford to not put the fire out. At the same time, you have to be looking, and steering everyone towards a bigger vision.
And the crisis of the moment is also a good way to feel accomplished. Like I feel really good about myself. Oh, I fixed these 10 things today. You don't always feel as accomplished, being that tortoise working towards a steady, even end game. Although real estate's never steady or even, but
No.
Very few things are. So in everyone's journey, there's always a lot of struggle, as we all know. We don't get anywhere easily. Everything takes a lot of hard work, a lot of mistakes, and a lot of growth and learning, probably every single day, I would guess. What do you feel like you constantly struggle with and have to evolve over?
I think my biggest struggle is that I sincerely want to connect with people.
Yep.
And I sincerely want every conversation to end with everyone winning.
Right.
And it just can't be that way. And I can't sit in this seat and have every conversation, every discussion, every decision make everyone happy. And that's been difficult for me. What I have learned, and I continue to learn, that the more direct and the more honest I am about things that maybe are uncomfortable in managing or in making a decision, the better it is for everyone.
Now you're at a place where it's easier to be direct and tell people what they really need to hear as opposed to dancing around the issue. But where did you start? When you first were managing people and had to give them tough feedback, what did you, like, what happened? Like, I want to see the evolution, like,
Oh, I would avoid it to begin with.
Okay, so first you wouldn't have the conversation, you just avoid it. That's what most new managers do. They just avoid the conversation and try to be positive.
I would avoid the conversation.
Okay, that's step one.
And then step two was I would have the conversation sort of half-assed.
Right,
to
not
be perfectly
really tell them the truth.
Yeah,
Okay.
just sort of
That was the second
point out
evolution.
point out their strengths and point out some of the things I'm struggling with, and I would hope and pray that they would sort of get it.
Right, okay, and then you evolved, what's step three? How did that
Step three
evolve
was was similar to step two, except that I would be a little more direct and I would actually state what I wanted, but I didn't make them have any ownership of it.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so then step four is
Step
what?
four is kind of where I am now, which I state what the issue is. I mean, at first, I still acknowledge everyone's strengths.
Okay.
State what the issue is.
So you still make them feel loved.
Still make
Okay,
them feel
yes.
loved, state what the issue is, state what the resolution is,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure they understand the resolution.
Okay, and why is it so important for them to understand the resolution?
Because I suffered through a period of time where everyone agreed with me
Mm-hmm.
and no changes happened.
right? Because the company needs to move forward, the office needs to move forward, the business is moving forward. And by the way, if you don't move forward, the world's moving forward without you.
Correct.
So if the change is not happening, the change is happening. It's just that you're not going to be changing. And everything is going to move, and the competition is going to come in and take the business and so everyone has to be evolving. And sometimes people have a really hard time hearing that. Yeah. And that's why ultimately you have to make those cuts when people can't hear it. But as a leader, you have to make sure you deliver the message so that they are hearing it, at least clearly enough, and then they can make that choice. Right? That's the key, is you have to deliver it so clearly, and then you know, okay, I did my part, and if they've chosen not to move forward with us, then I have to make a choice, because otherwise it's not fair to the rest of the organization.
And sometimes these conversations aren't as drastic as having to make personnel changes.
Right.
Sometimes it's really just making a policy change.
Right.
And I think in the past, where I was weaker, I would present all the reasons why we would need a policy change, and I would get a lot of nodding heads, and I'd walk away and think I'd accomplished something. And I'd realize 3 or 4 months later that everyone was acting the same way they'd acted before we had the conversation. So
Right.
now in the more direct way, we'll have a discussion on a policy change, and I will not leave the room until we have a strategy of exactly how it's going to be implemented with a timeline.
Right, that's the big shift, right? Right, because again, if you're not making those shifts, the world's making that shift without you.
And people don't like change.
No, they don't. Why? Why do you think people don't like change?
I think it's a combination of things. I think people believe the way they've been doing it is the right way sometimes. They're more comfortable doing it that way. And maybe it shows weakness on their part that they didn't come up with the change first.
Interesting.
I'm not sure.
Because it shows their vulnerability.
Yeah.
Right.
I would say that probably my biggest responsibility is Daniel Gale's going to be 100 years old in 2022.
Wow.
And my responsibility is to make sure that we are focused, we are prepared to be here in the next 100 years.
That is great. Thank you so much, Deirdre. Everything you said today was fantastic. We really appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
was
Thank you for
amazing.
having me.